Hey everyone, I'm Keith. I'm the designer of Legacy's Allure. In this video, I'm going to give you a rundown on how to play Legacy's Allure in Tabletop Simulator and how to use the Kingdom Builder on our website. So we're going to create a game, and normally you'll do a multiplayer. I'm going to go to single player though. If you don't have the mod, go to the workshop, search for the mod, subscribe. It should be in here, and then you can click load. And you'll want to make sure that this number right here matches the number on this card. If it does not, then you need to exit this server you've created, turn off mod caching right here, and then recreate the server, and that way your card images will be up to date. Alright, so Legacy's Allure is a customizable card-based war game for 2 players, and what we're going to do is skip the drafting phase and the deployment phase in this game I'm going to show you, and we're just going to use pre-made armies to battle it out. So the way you'll get to the pre-made armies is by choosing a color, and if you're new, I would recommend you go down to default armies, click Carthul Army 1 if you want to be orcs, and then the blue player can be Donovan Army 1. So again, that's using the default armies button down in the bottom right. And these are standard 80 gold armies. If you want less gold to play with, then you can just remove cards from the battlefield until you have a little bit of a simpler setup. If we click these buttons over here, you see at the top how it's saying that the gold count is 80. So, the pikemen. And if you hold down Alt, by the way, you can see the increase size of the card and use your mouse wheel to scroll in. See in the top right, the pikeman is 4 gold. If we were to drag this off the battlefield, now it says we only have 76 gold. And the goal of the game is to destroy the other player's army, or whoever is in control of this middle hex at the end of the 7th round. And if no one is at that hex at the end of the 7th round, the second player wins, and we'll determine who goes first and who goes second here in a moment. As I mentioned, we skipped the drafting phase and the deployment phase. In a full version of this game, you would have a 200 gold kingdom that you could create, and you would draft what army you want from it. And that's a bit more advanced. I recommend you get a few games with pre-made armies under your belt before you try to create your own kingdom and draft. But once you're ready to do that, there's always people willing to show you in our Discord server. So with that, let's click Begin Battle Phase. It's going to do a couple things when we click that button. It's going to add in the ability to do counters on the cards. So poison, burn, damage, mana. And you'll notice that cards that have starting mana have their mana counters set up automatically. So again, holding down Alt, you see in the bottom right of the Tempest Mage that number 4, that's the starting mana pool. That's what your mana counter will correspond to. The other thing that clicking that button did is it brought out a die, and we can use this in a couple ways. First of all, we'll use it to roll. So if you mouse over it and hit R, you can roll. And once you've decided who is going first, leave the die here on the 1, because whatever unit gets to that central hex first will get a free shield, and that is represented by a die. All right, let's go over the turn system really quick, the basic gameplay loop. So this game is very similar to chess in a lot of ways. We use alternating activations. So let's say that blue is going first. Blue is going to take a single action, and that will mean picking a single unit or piece, if you want to think of it that way, out on the battlefield, using its action point, and then it goes to the other player. And there's no exceptions ever. And in chess, you can think of it as every piece has a single action, and you can either move or attack. In this game, you can move, attack, or use an ability. So let's go through those possible actions. Let's start with, say, the swordsman. So if I hold down Alt and look at the swordsman at the bottom, you're going to see 5 numbers. You're going to see its attack value, its range, and if it has an N, it means it's melee, it has no range. Its movement, its health, and its mana pool. Again, N means no mana pool. So let's say that for my first turn I wanted to move. I wanted to move to the center. Well, this does have 3 movements, so 1, 2, free. You could move out here. And unlike in chess, you can't keep moving a piece over and over again. Instead, once a piece's action point has been used, you're going to exhaust it. And to exhaust it, I hit the E key. You can think of E for exhaust. You can also hit Q to go back in the other direction. So basically, each player is going to go back and forth taking actions until both sides are completely exhausted, and then we're going to click the end round button and everything will be refreshed and we'll start over, and we'll keep doing that for 7 rounds. So that is movement, very simple. Let's talk about attacking. So again, going back to chess, you can think of every attack in chess as a melee attack, but in this game there's also ranged attacks. So as an example, let's take a look at the Troll Doctor. We open that up, look at the bottom, you see it deals 1 damage and it has 2 range, so it can hit something up to 2 range away. 1, 2. So we could exhaust this to do an attack and deal 1 damage to that, just like that. And there's no retaliation against ranged units. Now let's do a melee attack. Melee attacks are a little more complicated. Again, think of chess. Whenever you attack with a piece in chess, you capture that space. And it's the same thing in this game. Let's say that the swordsman is attacking the grunt, and the grunt already has 1 damage on it. The swordsman is going to deal 3 damage to it, which would reduce the grunt's health to 0, so it would die. So this is what would happen. The swordsman needs at least 1 movement point to perform an adjacent attack because the combat happens in the defender's hex if you're performing a melee attack. So what would happen is the swordsman would walk into the grunt's hex, kill the grunt would be dead, we'd move this off to the side, and now the swordsman would be in that hex and exhausted. So we've effectively captured that hex. Now, let's say that the grunt did not have any damage on it. In this case, we would attack, we would deal 3 damage to the grunt would not be dead, so after combat was over, the grunt would effectively push the swordsman back into its starting hex, wherever it last was before it performed the attack, and the grunt gets to retaliate. This knight has 3 movement and it has charging. What does charging mean? Well, if you hold down Alt-Shift, you can look at the back of a card and it will define any keywords. So charging is this unit may move and attack an enemy unit within its movement range in a single action. So I have 3 movement, 1, 2, 3. Am I able to attack the grunt? No, because remember that you need to be able to move adjacent to the defender and then have 1 remaining movement point to move into its hex. So in order to attack the grunt, I would actually need to be right here. 1, 2, 3, then I could attack. And again, in this case, I wouldn't kill it. I would deal 3 damage with my knight, and then the knight would be pushed back to whatever hex it was last in, and the grunt would retaliate. But I have armor 1 on the knight, which means this unit takes 1 less damage from sources of physical damage. So that means I would take 2. And all combat damage is physical by default, whereas a lot of abilities that cost mana and deal damage, they're going to be magical by default. And then you're going to have other units like this, the Tempest Mage, they're going to have the imbued keyword. That means that it deals its combat damage as magical damage. So there's physical damage in this game, which is reduced by armor. Magical damage is reduced by magic resist. And then there's also something called pure damage, which isn't reduced by anything, not even shields, but nothing in this particular game we're playing has pure damage. Now, I wanted to show you an interesting situation that can arise with charging. Let's bring the Pegasus up here, and we'll just assume that the Pegasus started the round right here and is refreshed right here. Pegasus has flying and charging. Flying means that you can fly over units, so that means I could perform an attack in the backline, kind of like this. And I have 4 movement. So as an example, the Scourge Sorcerer right here has only 1 health. So if I wanted, I could go 1, 2, 3, 4. I could charge through here and kill that. and it would be removed from the battlefield. That would be illegal. But let's look at another example. Here we have Carthul, the orc hero. He has 4 health. Could I attack Carthul? Well, if I attacked Carthul, I would not kill Carthul. So I would come along here, 1, 2, 3. I would get pushed back, as always happens with a melee attack, but I would be in that hex that I was last in before the attack, which happens to be occupied by the Razormane Manticore. A cardinal rule of this game is you cannot perform an action that would result in 2 cards being in the same hex at the end of a turn. That is actually an illegal move, and you can't do it. All right, so that was moving, attacking. Now let's talk about abilities. Let's take a look at the Troll Doctor. So the Troll Doctor has 3 abilities. It has a passive called Allied Pathing. Passive abilities, of course, are always on. They're always taking place. They always have effect. Allied Pathing just means this unit can move through allied units. And then it has 2 active abilities, Heal and Restore. So an active ability is always going to have the name of the ability, followed by a hyphen, followed by whatever the cost is, if there is one. And in this case, Heal and Restore both say 1M, which means 1 mana. So if you want to use the heal, you need to pay 1 mana. So what we would do, let's say the Razormane Manticore had 2 damage on it. We would tick that down, reduce it to 2, exhaust it, and remove the damage just like that. Some abilities also have the combinable keyword on it. If we look on the back, it says combinable. This unit may move and use this ability in a single action. So a good example of when we might do this is, let's say that the Manticore has 2 damage on it. We want to heal it, but it's out of range. As you saw, that heal can only heal within 3 range. And right now we would need 1, 2, 3, 4 range. Well, what I can do is combine the heal with a movement. I can basically move to right here, and then I'll be in range to heal. And the reason I'm able to move through Carthul, again, is because I have Allied Pathing. Most of the Erengard units, which are the humans, do not have pathing of any kind. So their priests are not able to do that kind of thing. So I would just move it through here, take that down, and now... And last up, let's talk about the heroes. So each army is always going to have 1 hero. The hero is the only unit out on the battlefield that does not have a gold cost. Losing your hero is not a loss condition. So you can think of your heroes like the queen in chess. It is the most powerful unit on the battlefield, but its death is not a loss condition. So you can sacrifice it strategically when you want to. And you'll notice that these cards are a little barren. Donovan has no abilities written on it. Carthul has Allied Pathing. That's because all of the abilities for your hero are actually going to be kept in the back as reference cards. The reason being, you can draft and kind of customize your hero for each battle. Kind of like how you can customize your entire unit layout, you can customize your hero as well. So in this particular game, Donovan is more of a frontline tank, and so we wanted to give him a lot of tools to be able to deal with this Crag Behemoth, which is the orc's biggest, beefiest unit. So we drafted abilities like Shield Bash, which can exhaust, Arrest, which can disarm. That means that the unit won't be able to attack or retaliate. We also gave him Divine Favor, which means at the start of battle, he'll get 2 shield. So we could put 2 shield on there. Likewise, Carthul drafted a Buckler, which gives him 1 shield for a little bit of extra durability. And then on Donovan, we also have the Felguard's Battlesuit and the Short Sword. These are items. They are not specific to any faction. Any hero can draft them as long as you just pay the gold cost. But you will see in the middle of each item there's a number, so 2 and 1. Those are the inventory slots that items take up. And each hero only has 3 inventory slots to work with. So between the Battlesuit and the Short Sword, Donovan is maxed out on item slots and cannot have any more items. Abilities, however, you can have as many abilities as you want as long as you're using an ability that belongs to that hero. So again, you see in the middle of the card it says the hero's name. These all belong to Donovan. And over on the right side, you see the mana cost for using that ability if it's an active ability. And if it's a passive ability, then it will have an in. So that's Donovan. He's a frontline tank. Carthul is more of a backline caster wizard type, much squishier. And so we have Chain Lightning, Lightning Bolt, Fury, and we've given him Rod of Asmodet, which gives additional cast range that will apply to all of his spells, and then a little bit of extra durability. So the last thing I want to tell you while we're in TTS here is how to handle priority at the end of a round. So we know that after we've rolled, we'll know who goes first on the first round. Let's do this. Let's say that we have exhausted almost everything except we're down to maybe one unit remaining on each side that hasn't been exhausted. And of course, at the end of the first round, your battlefield is not going to look like this, but you get the idea. So let's say that it is Erengard's turn, it's the blue player's turn, and let's say that the last action that happened was the grunt. Let's say that they did something with the grunt, like they moved it out here. That means that the orc player is the last player who acted. If Erengard wants to go first, then what Erengard can do is skip all their remaining actions. Because the rule is whoever last performs an action in a round will go second in the next round. And when you skip an action, you still have to exhaust something. It still consumes an action point, but it does not actually count as using an action. So the grunt moves out here. Erengard really wants to go first, so the player says, you know what, I'm just going to skip that. I'm not going to do anything with it. Now at this point, the grunt is still the last unit that acted. This means that the red player now has the luxury of doing whatever they want with all their remaining actions. And by the way, you can string actions together toward the end of the game when one player is completely exhausted. Yeah, you might as well do something with the Razormane Manticore at this point if it's advantageous to you, because the red player is guaranteed to go second no matter what. Once you have everything exhausted, you'll click End Round. It'll refresh everything, and you keep going. So that's how to play. Again, if you're new, I'd recommend you maybe simplify the battlefield, remove some units if you want. I would also recommend in the first round that you avoid analysis paralysis by thinking of some of your units as pawns and kind of developing your pawns first. So as an example of that, on the side of Erengard, we have these swordsmen, very simple vanilla units. If you're not certain what to do, just move those swordsmen forward and see how the enemy reacts. And then you can make decisions with your more complicated units. Same thing with Gath, which is the name of the orc faction. Your grunts are kind of like your pawns. You can move them forward, do something with them. By the way, you don't have to just move forward in this game. You can move anywhere you want. Just typically, you're going to try to set up some strategy around the mid. So after you've played a few games, you're probably going to develop an interest in wanting to customize your army. You can, of course, go to the default armies and try out any number of other armies that we have available. But again, at some point you might want to make your own, and you might also decide that you don't want to skip the drafting and deployment. You can go on our website then, and if you want to read the rules on how to do all that, you can go to Basic Rules. Eventually you're going to get to the point where you will want to create your own army, create your own kingdom. So that's why we have this Kingdom Builder tool. And as a matter of nomenclature, what you see out here on the battlefield right now, this is called your army. This is 80 gold, and it would have been drafted from a 200 gold kingdom. So you can come to the Kingdom Builder and use it for either. Whatever army you've been working on, once you have it ready, what you would do is come in here, come over to this iPad, paste it in, and then click Create Cards, and it's going to create all those cards right here, and now you have your deck that you can draft from. And if you want to verify the gold count, you can drag it over here, click Count Gold, You can see it's 32, which corresponds to this, so it looks like everything imported correctly. And once you start to draft, what I would recommend you do is something like this. Each player is, by the way, allowed to look at the other player's kingdom. So either player can do this. You can go to a kingdom, right-click search, and I'm not going to explain all the draft rules, but basically you're going to go back and forth choosing a card. And if you have any more questions, feel free to ask in our Discord. We'd love to have you and love to play some games with you. So hope to see you soon.